Hi. Today I have decided I'm going to talk about forgiveness. And I haven't done that many videos yet, but each time I've done one, I kind of think about, oh, maybe I should shorten them because they are a little bit long. But it's just really hard to do. Because the topics I'm talking about are involved and they have a lot of layers, and forgiveness is definitely one of them. So I don't know. I'll see how it goes. I can try in the back of my mind to keep it shorter, but we'll see. So, where to begin with forgiveness? It is definitely not easy, obviously. The more toxic the situation was, the layers of betrayal, slander, whatever the situation was, it can be very, very hard to let that go. The sadness, the disappointment, the injustice, the rage, all of those things. And since I have personally been through a lot in my life and have dealt with abuse in various different ways, different situations, different people throughout my life, narcissism being one of the most destructive and traumatic, having PTSD and all this stuff, trying to come to terms with the ins and outs and all of that. And I have talked a lot about that in my book, Unnecessary Clearing, and I've talked about it in past videos too. So I won't get into all the details and the layers of all of that, but in terms of forgiveness, it can be a really difficult thing because you can't get to that end point, that place of peace and balance with yourself again, until you really let yourself go through those layers of feelings. It's almost like when someone talks about a death, there's so many layers of healing before you've truly healed, steps of mourning, all that, and anger, acceptance, and it's the same, I really do believe, with trying to get to a point of forgiveness, because there's so many layers within yourself that you're trying to deal with in order to get there. And I've, even with, just personally speaking of me, even with me being someone who really can, I'm not just saying it, I really can, even in the height of the moments, I really can still look at things from the other person's perspective and understand what they're doing and why. It doesn't mean I never question myself or get into all these other things, but I usually am very good at still, even in anger and sadness and the whole thing in pain, I'm still able to look at the entire picture. And even with that, it's still really difficult to finally get to that place of forgiveness. It can be. And there are a lot of pieces to that. I've talked about some of these pieces in other videos, but I'll mention them again because it's related to this. The first one being that when you really think about it, we are experiencing our lives technically solo. Yes, we're interacting with each other, of course, but your perspective your level of happiness, peace, trauma, literally everything is coming through you solo. You know, so you are really the person that is responsible for your level of happiness, peace, whatever it may be, including the negative. And that can be kind of a hard thing to grasp when you are stuck in a reactionary mode of things that have happened to you. Very normal human thing to deal with. You know, you're trying to come to terms with things, and it can just be very hard. But still, nevertheless, it doesn't make that any less true. You know, it just takes getting to a place, again, it takes a lot of time, getting to a place where you can finally remove your emotions enough, just enough, you know, at first and then more so later, remove your emotions enough to be able to see even more of that wider perspective, the layers, you know, of being able to have that emotional distance and to really, really look at all the pieces. And to realize that you don't have to continue to be affected by what happened. Difficult, I know, but still that is the truth. So then it becomes about trying to release what has happened, coming to terms with it. And I think what really helps a lot with that is, well, one of the things is thinking about the other person, thinking about the person who was abusive to you or whatever the situation was, who betrayed you or whatever. Really thinking about that person and understanding that when someone gets into a mode that is deliberately cruel, deliberately unfair, you know, they do that whole false puffing themselves up at your expense thing, you know, they get off, so to speak, on making you feel low, making you feel less than, kicking you when you're down, you know, like all of these things, and then they feel better than or whatever, and they're super competitive, super toxic. Or if it was someone who just really cannot be faithful, you know, and so they're always looking for more. That lack mentality, the person who always needs an out, you know, whether that's an out of full-on lying and manipulation, blaming you, you know, there's all these different layers, all these different situations of what it could be. But what can be helpful is to focus on what it is, why that person was there, and just understanding that if someone is stuck in those behaviors, no matter how good they are at playing that they, you know, with their persona, that they have won, that they are better than you, that you're not worth anything, that, you know, if there's someone that even needs to go there, right? They can't have a real conversation with you to get anywhere real or mutual. You know, there's no equal conversation. There's no equal honesty, acknowledgement of where they are imbalanced, no ownership of anything, all those things. If you really look at someone who is consistently in that behavior, eventually with your own emotional distance, you can start to really see how much pain they are in, how much that is a lack of their own self-love, self-worth. Someone who is a bully out of overcompensation. You know, that's not a balanced behavior, obviously. It's an overcompensation from that feeling of lack, that lack of self-worth, that lack of balance, obviously. I got to get mine, you know, even if it's at the expense of you, just, you know, without giving exact examples. You know, I think you understand what I'm saying with these examples. It's whatever that behavior comes out as, that toxicity, that viciousness, they are in this constant reactionary mode, and it's at the expense of you at all costs rather than them, is how they're seeing it. You know, even if you're not, even if like you really were trying to have a mutual place, trying to find some kind of resolution, and they couldn't do it, and they got vicious and all these things, you know, whatever the situation, that is a person that is truly miserable, in pain. They haven't, and I'm sorry if you can hear the garbage trucks and stuff off to the side. They just happen to come down the street right now, I'm sorry. But they are truly lost in that mode. You know, this can be, and oftentimes it is, all the way back from their childhood. Whatever abuse, whatever trauma they went through that they weren't ever able to heal, they didn't understand, or didn't have anybody obviously there that could help them to deal with it, or you know, whatever their case may be, whatever examples of the abuse that they went through, now they are, you know, acting out because of that, right? That fear, that imbalance, that lack of self-love. If you can get to a point where you understand, really understand that, it can help you over time to lessen all of those side effects for yourself. You know, I think it's so important to think about that even as an exercise. Because, I mean, abusive people were abused. That is almost 100% of the time the case, you know? These are habits, these are things that are learned in reactionary behavior that they are not understanding how to control. Triggers, and, you know, they think they're protecting themselves. They think they're winning also by doing this, but it's neither. It's destruction, and that's all it is. And they're actually, an abusive person is actually destroying balance from coming to them. They don't think that's the case. Their ego is telling them the opposite, but it's actually the case. Because someone who's in that mode habitually, and I've talked about this before, but I'll say it quickly again. Someone who's in that mode habitually, it's a habit, it's like an addiction. They don't know how else to handle these feelings, these, you know, triggered spaces, and they've been doing it for so long that they just keep doing it, and it becomes a cycle. It's an addiction, a habit, you know, and they just lash instead of actually really being able to have real vulnerability, a real conversation that goes anywhere productive, you know. I can look at the various instances in my life, very painful times, you know, still affects me, as you can tell. But I do feel compassion. And it depends on the day, you know, like most of the time I am in a place that I can think about these things and have that emotional distance and be okay. You know, I'm seeing things as they are. I had dealt with my issues and stuff, my imbalances, because if someone is able to attack you, if they're able to tear you down, that too is also showing you something within yourself that you need to strengthen, that you need to heal, right? So I had done that, and I'm looking at them, and I can understand where they're coming from, you know, why they're stuck in those behaviors, why they're reacting in the ways that they are. And I know that I tried with everything in me to reach out to them, even in the midst of it, to really try and help them actually deal with the situation without being abusive. You know, like, you don't have to go there kind of a thing, but they still couldn't do it, right? And it just takes time. Like, once you've dealt with yourself, and that takes time enough, you know, but then, like I said, just really thinking about the other person, once you can, you know, without that rage, you know. Because it's almost like, in a way, you finally are at a point where you can remove ego. You're not coming from an ego place. You're coming from a heart place. You're coming from a spirit place. You're, you know, a love place. And you can really not be reactionary. You know, I mean, if anything, there's still some anger left over. I still have my days where something, I think about it for some reason, something comes up and it triggers it, you know, that anger again. And but most of all, it's sadness. And just this feeling that when I think about people in general, I think about this world in general, there's so much duality and fighting, and, you know, we've got religious wars, and we've got, I mean, racism, and just all this needless crap that doesn't need to exist, and it's just people being triggered. It's people not being able to see the bigger picture. It's people being addicted to trying to fill themselves with something outside of themselves, whether what they're trying to fill is a sense of security, success, popularity, feeling worthy, trying to get love from somebody before they have it fully within themselves. You know, all these things, just trying to fill what feels like a hole within themselves. And they're doing it, of course, then in very imbalanced ways, because they're not in balance themselves. So it's grasping, you know, so it's either over giving and not feeling worthy enough, so you're trying to get in that way, too compromising, too nice. It's that imbalanced feminine, or it's the imbalanced masculine, where you're taking and you're bullying, and I'm gonna attack the crap out of you because you didn't do, be, think, and feel what I wanted, when I wanted it, how I wanted it. You know, you can't do that. Well, then, you know, there's all these things happening with people. People are way more reactionary on average than they need to be. And this is something that I've been really trying to work with within myself too, and I have over my life basically, but even more so in a major way the last, I would say, 8 years. Really looking at emotions, intentions, you know, what's my self-talk? You know, what is happening when I'm reacting? What is happening with how I'm seeing things? What is my perspective on average? You know, all of these questions that I really feel are super necessary for all of us to ask ourselves. Because once you get to know yourself really, really super well, it's a natural thing then that you start to work with whatever imbalances are there and starting to come back into balance. You know, it takes time, it takes practice, reinforcement. And then over time, more and more and more, you're coming from that place of a more balanced, self-loving, truly giving space, energy, instead of attempting to fill something that you don't think is there, in whichever way that happens. You know, in this video, I'm just kind of throwing out different angles of things with this, mainly because I wanted to try and keep this video a little shorter than my other videos. I don't know, forgiveness is a really big topic though, so maybe I should do a longer video next time that really goes into it. But, you know, I just kind of wanted to say these things. If you're someone who's right now in a space of so much pain, I've been there, I get it. Anger. You know, you have so much pain and anger, it's like you have a hard time not thinking of anything else. Like you're just stuck in it. And you don't know what to do about it. And you know, just understand you're not alone with that, and it will take time. But if you can really start to think about on both sides, and it's going to be harder for you if you're really in the height of that, like it's new what has happened and it's like fresh and you're still really stuck. It might be a really hard thing for you to do. So start with yourself and really start asking yourself those questions in your own time. You know, what is your self-talk? If this person was able to do this to you, what exactly does that mean? And I'm not saying that you are responsible for what they did. It's not that. Okay, please don't take it that way. But I'm saying that we are not at the mercy of our emotions the way it feels like we are. We really do have a lot more control than that. And that becomes a part of taking your own power back when you do realize that, and you can act from that place that has a little bit more distance. Even while in pain, you know, you're still able to kind of have just a little bit more distance so that you can think a little bit more clearly about the larger picture. And eventually, hopefully, you know, getting to the point where you can think about the other person actually from a space of removed enough emotion where you have compassion for them. You're understanding how stuck they really are, that they are even having to be that vicious, that unfair, you know, that, you know, betraying level, or again, whatever the situation was. To even, in an odd way, kind of, maybe this will sound strange, I don't know, but to have compassion and almost gratitude for the fact that if you can really say that you weren't matching it, that your intentions were truly pure in the sense of trying to find a mutual space in whatever happened, and you know, and you're able to really look at yourself with honesty and understand where your imbalances can come into play also, and all these things. And you know, that is something to be celebrated. That's something that you should pat yourself on the back for, and really understand that you're on your way. You know, it's some people they have such a hard time with just even that step, right? The abusive person being a good example. So having compassion wherever you're at, you know, whoever you are, knowing that I've said this so many times, but I'll say it again. There is no better than or less than overall person. We are mind, heart, body, and soul, as a whole person. There is no overall better than or less than person, but there definitely are better than and less than choices, actions, reactions, and behaviors. Those can be measured. And you only have control over yourself ultimately, right? And we are experiencing our lives solo, like I said. So all you can do, if that person is unreachable and they're just going to be what they're going to be, it's unfortunate and it can be painful if you're really close to them and but all you really have control over is yourself, reminding yourself of that, really loving yourself enough to take the time to work through those feelings. If you're feeling that rage, if you're feeling that sadness, feel it. Just understand that reacting though from that, acting like them, is just going to drag you down to wherever they're at. Like, an abuser is turning, like you're letting yourself be turned into an abuser, basically, if you go that route. So really staying within yourself, loving yourself enough to do that, keeping some perspective as much as you can, and working through those layers so that that perspective can grow over time until you finally are in that place of that emotional space that takes into account fully both sides. Even in its unfairness, because at the end of the day, their behavior is a reflection of where they're at within themselves. It's not a reflection of you. Nobody deserves abuse. Nobody. So if that's where they're at, you can have, over time, compassion for that and understand that it's going to take time for them too. I mean, some people unfortunately never get there, but maybe this person will at some point. And in the meantime, you just have to focus on yourself, take care of yourself, love yourself, and you can love the other person too. I mean, but everybody deserves love no matter where they're at. Again, that can be hard too if you're in that space. You haven't reached forgiveness yet. You're still in a reactionary circular mode, and it's difficult. And I understand that. But eventually you can get there. And, it just takes time. I'm just thinking if there's another layer that I would like to throw in. Because again, I have talked about these types of things in past videos, in pieces, but I didn't talk fully about forgiveness, I don't feel, as the title of a video, as the main focus. So I think I'll leave it here. But I don't know, I hope it helps. I mean, this was a quick one, and I'm not used to doing the quick ones. It's actually more natural for me to really dig deep and get into the layers and really talk about each thing piece by piece. But either way, I hope this helps you if you're stuck and looking for some perspective, looking for some understanding. I think for me, I've said in past videos, I'm like at an 80%, 20% right now. So 80% of me is in a pretty good place. when I think about everything that I've been through and the stuff that has happened. You know, I've been working with this for a long time, and I think I'm okay. You know, I think 80% is a good judgment. But that other 20% can still kind of linger. There's still things that I find I'm reacting to. You know, it can be a little difficult, but I'm still moving. You know, I'm still working through it. So just know that it's definitely possible, and it's all okay. You know, we're all on this journey together. So just be kind to yourself. Be loving to yourself as much as possible. All right? So, okay, I'll leave it there. Much love, and I will speak to you again. Bye-bye.